stone, the ancient streets awaken. Under olive skies where covenant was spoken, columns rise in dust and firelight glow. Messengers walk where the prophets long to go. Build the walls, let mercy stand. Peace declared across the land. Trumpets cry, the heavens roar. Jubilee forevermore. 2 by 2 through city gates, carrying hope no empire breaks. Lambs among the wolves they tread, living words the Master said. Build the courts, restore the way. Let the broken rise today. From every town the voices sing, the kingdom of God is near our King. Lyre and flute in sacred sound, tumble groans the streets around. Dust falls off rejecting ground, yet heaven writes each faithful name down. Lightning splits the silent sky, darkness trembles passing by. Chains are broken, spirits flee, authority in humility. Praise the gates, let freedom start. Law engraved on every heart. From Zion's stones, eternity, we stand when on Jubilee Architecture. Shofar echoes through the night, ancient roads in holy light. What kings desire.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are opening up a file that, on the surface, looks like a collection of the greatest hits of Sunday school. You know the ones I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
You got the Good Samaritan, you got Martha and Mary.
Yeah.
It's familiar territory, or at least we think it is.
Well, that's the danger with familiar stories, isn't it?
Yeah.
We tend to skim them because we think, oh, I already know the punchline.
Right, be nice to people.
Be nice to people, or, pray more, work less. But when you actually stack the sources we have today, specifically this deep structural study on Luke 10, that whole anthology idea completely falls apart.
Right, because the source material uses a phrase that really, it just stopped me on my tracks.
Yeah.
It calls this chapter Jubilee Architecture.
It's a striking phrase.
It is. It implies structure, design, intentionality. It suggests that Luke 10 isn't just some random collection of moral anecdotes thrown together.
No, it's a blueprint.
It's a blueprint, specifically a manual for scaling the kingdom of God. It answers the question, how do you take the presence of Jesus, which is localized in one body, and multiply it exponentially?
And that is the core engineering problem of the gospel, if you want to look at it that way. If Jesus is the solution to the world's fracture, how does that solution scale? And the source material outlines is just fascinating because it's almost mathematical.
Yeah.
It starts with Jesus, single variable. Then in Luke 9, it moves to the 12. But by the time we get to Luke 10, the chapter we're diving into, it expands to the 72.
And the final variable in that equation is
Us.
Yeah.
Exactly. Jesus to the 12, to the 72, to us.
So that's the scope. We're looking at the architecture of how the kingdom expands. But before we get into the mechanics of how it works, we need to define the mission. because the sources are very specific here.
Mhm.
This isn't just go make people convert or, go hand out flyers. The mission is defined as the restoration of spiritual wellness to homes fractured by sin and oppression.
Which is heavy. It totally reorients the goal from, say, information transfer to healing.
Yes.
It's not just knocking on doors, it's entering fractured spaces and bringing wholeness. It's bringing Jubilee liberty right into the living room.
And to do that, you need a certain mindset. The research poses 3 heart-reorienting questions right at the top. And I want to throw these out to you listening right now, especially if you're planning to teach this or share this with a group, because they frame everything we're about to discuss. Number 1, are you operating with Martha-style labor or Mary-style mission?
Oof. And we're definitely going to spend some real time on that distinction later.
For sure.
Yeah.
Number 2, do you see the Jubilee moments right before your eyes, or are you blinded by your own service?
That second one is dangerous. Blinded by your own service. We'll see that so clearly with the priest and Levite.
Yeah.
You can be so busy serving God that you miss God.
And finally, and this one stings a little, are you ready to transition from a love self daily mindset to a deny self daily apprenticeship?
Those questions, they move this from an intellectual exercise to a diagnostic. If you answer those honestly, you're ready to look at the text.
So let's look at the blueprints. Section 1, the scaling. We are moving from the 12 in Luke 9 to the 72 in Luke 10. What's shifting here contextually?
The context is the harvest. Jesus looks out and says the harvest is abundant, but the workers are few. Now, in modern corporate terms, we'd say there's a supply chain issue.
Right, a labor shortage.
Demand is high, labor supply is low. Usually a leader would just complain about it or maybe try to automate the process. Jesus does neither. He activates a new tier of workers.
He democratizes the work. He scales the operation. He sends out the 72. And the instructions he gives them are, honestly, they're terrifying.
They are. He doesn't sugarcoat it at all.
Lambs among wolves.
Right. This isn't some safe, controlled expansion strategy. He tells them to go into cities and villages, specifically into homes. But it's the posture the sources highlight that is so crucial here. They aren't just sent to deliver a message. They are sent to be peace.
Verse 5, right? Peace be to this house.
It's a transactional moment in the spiritual realm. It's not just a greeting, it's a delivery. They are carriers of the Kingdom Jubilee. They're bringing a tangible release from oppression into these homes. But, and this is the part we often skip over in the children's version, Jesus is very clear about the environment.
The wolves.
The wolves, the harvest is urgent, the workers are few, and the environment is hostile. But the 72 go anyway.
And this is where that us variable kicks in. If the math holds up, Jesus, 12, 72, us, then we are the ones currently walking into those wolves. We're spectators watching the professionals do it.
And that's a massive shift for a lot of believers. We tend to think the 12, the clergy, the professionals, the folks with the degrees, they're the ones who face the lulls. The 72 represents the lay people, the everyday apprentice. And Jesus is saying, no, you go too. You have the peace. You carry the cure.
The transformative lesson here is that we are co-laborers in Jesus' harvest field. We have to move from spectator to participant.
Exactly. You can't sit in the stands and claim to be part of the team.
So they go out, they face the wolves, they enter the homes, and then we get to the return. Luke 10.1720.
Yeah.
The source material describes this moment as having high energy.
Oh, absolutely. I love visualizing this. The sources paint this image of a typical Roman road steep, paved with stone, winding through the hills. And these 72 people are coming back up that road. They've been out there for who knows how long. They are probably sweating, dusty, exhausted, maybe a little scraped up.
Oh, they're buzzing.
But they are absolutely buzzing with adrenaline.
They're hyped.
They are shouting, Lord, even the demons submit to us in your name. They've touched the supernatural. They've seen the power of the name.
It's a joy-filled energy. And honestly, if I were the team leader, I'd be high-fiving them. I'd be saying, great job, look at those metrics. Demons submitted, check. Cities reached, check.
But Jesus does something very subtle and incredibly important here. He validates the victory. He says, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. He acknowledges that the power shift is real. But then he pivots. He says, do not rejoice that the spirits submit to you.
But rejoice that your names are written in heaven.
That is the pivot point for sustainable ministry. The disciples are excited about power and production.
Look what we did.
Look what we did. Look what we accomplished. Jesus reorients them to find their joy and belonging.
And why is that distinction so critical in this Jubilee architecture?
Because power fluctuates, success fluctuates. Some days the demons submit, some days they don't. Some days the harvest is easy, some days you get bitten by the wolves. If your joy is tied to your output, you will burn out. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
But if your joy is tied to the fact that you belong to Christ, that your name is written in heaven, that is a stable foundation. It's a joy that can't be taken away by a bad day in the field.
The notes have a great one-liner for this. True joy isn't just in the work accomplished, but in the belonging secured.
It changes everything. It means you can go into the harvest field without this desperate need to prove yourself. You're already approved. You already belong. You work from approval, not for approval.
That's a game changer. So we have the mission, we have the return, and we have the joy. But then the camera zooms in. We move from the group of 72 to a specific interaction. A lawyer stands up.
The antagonist, or maybe the mirror for many of us.
He asks, "Who is my neighbor?" And this leads us into the story of the Good Samaritan. But our sources frame this in a really interesting way as the cost of mercy.
And they use this lens of listening versus distracted to analyze the characters. This isn't just about being nice, it's about what you are paying attention to.
Let's break down the types in this story because the source material suggests we can find ourselves in all of them. First, the lawyer.
The lawyer is the head knowledge guy. The sources note he knew and memorized the law. He had the theology down pat, but his motivation was to justify himself. He wanted to earn life through knowing the rules.
He's looking for the minimum viable requirement. Who is my neighbor? Is essentially asking, who isn't my neighbor? Who can I ignore and still get into heaven?
Exactly, he wants a loophole. Jesus requires him to practice the heart of the law-loving YHWH and loving his neighbor, not just analyzing the text of the law.
Then we have the priest and the Levite. And this is where that Jubilee architecture idea really hits home for me. Because it's so easy to paint them as villains, but the sources describe them as blinded by much temple service.
That's a frightening description for anyone in ministry or leadership, or anyone who considers themselves a serious believer. These weren't necessarily bad men, they were busy men.
Right.
They were contracted to the temple. They had schedules, they had purity laws to maintain. If they touched a dead body or even a half-dead body, they would be ritually unclean, they'd lose their shift, they would inconvenience their entire lives.
So the notes say they loved self daily, but not in a narcissistic, mirror-gazing way. It was a self-preservation way. They protected their time, their schedule, their cleanliness.
And because of that self-protection, they missed the Jubilee moment right before their eyes. There was a fractured life, a bleeding human, literally in their path on that Roman road. But their schedule control blinded them. They were so busy serving God in the abstract that they couldn't see God's image bearer in the concrete.
That is a massive indictment of professional holiness.
Mm-hmm.
It prompts the question, are you too busy doing church work to actually do the work of the kingdom?
It's the difference between loving the idea of mission and loving the actual person in front of you.
And then comes the Samaritan.
The Samaritan is the contrasting type. The sources describe him as self-denying and cross-carrying.
So what sets him apart, aside from the obvious fact that ethnically he's the last guy you'd expect to help?
First, he saw another imager. He didn't see a political enemy or a theological problem. He saw a fellow human made in God's image. And then, and this is so crucial, he stopped. He allowed himself to be interrupted.
The sources list an inventory of his sacrifice, and when you read it out like a shopping list, it's staggering. It says his own oil, his own wine, his own animal, his own time, his own money.
And the most visceral one on that list, bloodstains.
Yeah, that one stuck with me.
You can't bind up the wounds of a half-dead man without getting messy. The priest and Levite stayed clean. Their robes were spotless when they got to Jericho. The Samaritan got stained. That is the cost of mercy. You cannot restore a fractured home or a fractured life from a distance. You have to get close enough to get blood on your clothes.
That is haunting. It really forces the probing question. Are you too busy with temple duties to see the bleeding neighbor on your path?
And there's one more character the sources mention here who often gets left out of the sermon, the innkeeper.
Ah, yes, the silent partner.
The sources call him the silent partner and Jubilee embodiment. He provides this space for healing.
I love that.
He embodies hospitality. He allows his establishment to become a hospital. It's a reminder that we don't all have to be the one on the road. Sometimes we are the one opening the door to provide the long-term care. It takes an ecosystem to heal a fractured life.
So we've seen the scaling of the mission, the 72 going out. We've seen the cost of mercy on the road, the blood stains and the oil. Now the scene shifts again. We move from the road to a living room. Bethany, Martha, and Mary.
And honestly, this is usually preached as, don't be busy, just pray. Or, introverts are better than extroverts.
Right. Mary is the spiritual one, Martha is the stressed one. But our sources go deeper into the Greek here to correct that. It's not about the activity, it's about the source of the activity.
They focus on the diagnosis of Martha. The Greek term used is perispato.
Perispato. What does that literally mean?
It literally means dragged around.
Dragged around. That's visceral.
Martha was distracted. She was dragged around by much serving. Think about that image. She isn't driving the bus, she's being dragged behind it. Her work, her chores, her sense of obligation is pulling her in every direction. She is a victim of her own service.
And that leads to the complaint. She comes to Jesus and says, Lord, don't you care?
Her service became a source of complaint because she lacked the one thing. She was operating in Martha-style labor. It's frantic, it's anxious, it's performative. It's the same energy as the priest and Levite, just inside a house instead of on the road. It's service without connection.
Contrast that with Mary.
Mary represents the blessedness of listening. She is sitting at the Lord's feet. And the key lesson the Sage highlights here is a powerful one-liner. Listening and hearing precedes formation.
Unpack that. Listening and hearing precedes formation.
You cannot be formed into the image of Christ if you are not listening to the voice of Christ. It's impossible. Martha was trying to serve Jesus without listening to him. Mary understood that before she could do anything for him, she had to receive from him.
So this is the transition the source calls for. It's a call to move from Martha-style labor to Mary-style mission.
Right, because Mary isn't lazy. Tradition tells us Mary was deeply involved in the mission later, but her mission flows out of that listening posture. If you try to do the work of the 72 with the spirit of Martha dragged around by anxiety, you will crash. You cannot be a co-laborer with Christ if you are being dragged around by the work itself.
That hits hard. It connects back to the priest and Levite, doesn't it? They were dragged around by their religious duties. The Samaritan, paradoxically, had the freedom to stop. He wasn't dragged, he was led by compassion.
Exactly, and this brings us to the ultimate comparison. We have to zoom out and look at the divine parallel. Because the story of the Good Samaritan isn't just a moral example, it's a picture of Jesus.
The sources map this out so beautifully. They draw a line from the Samaritan's actions directly to the Lord's actions.
Let's trace it. The Lord created imagers, that's us. We became lost imagers, stripped, beaten, half dead in sin. We were the guy in the ditch.
In religion, the priest and the Levite couldn't save us. It just walked on by. It had rules, but no power to heal.
Right. But like the Samaritan, Jesus enters the scene. He took on flesh. He left glory. Just as the Samaritan got off his donkey, Jesus got off his throne. He owned nothing. He stored nothing. He poured out compassion. He poured out his blood.
The Samaritan gave his oil and wine. Jesus gave his life. The Samaritan paid the innkeeper 2 denarii.
Jesus paid it all. And this creates the framework for apprenticeship. We have 2 paths. Path A, the priest, the Levite, and let's be honest, the default setting of you and me. That path is love self daily. Protect your schedule. Keep your hands clean. Avoid the mess.
And path B.
Path B, the Samaritan, Jesus, and the apprentice. That path is deny self daily. See the imager. Stop the journey. Pay the cost. Accept the bloodstains.
So when we look at that progression again, Jesus to the 12 to the 72, to us, it's not just a scaling of numbers. It's a scaling of this specific kind of love. It's reproducing the Samaritan heart in 72 people, then in thousands, then in us.
That's the Jubilee Architecture. It's building a kingdom where fractured homes are restored because God's people are willing to be interrupted, willing to listen like Mary, and willing to sacrifice like the Samaritan.
So what does this all mean for the person listening right now? Maybe they're preparing to teach this class, or maybe they just needed to hear this for themselves. How do we synthesize this?
I think it means we need to stop viewing these as separate stories. It's one flow. You start at the feet of Jesus, like Mary, listening so you aren't dragged around by life. That listening fills you with the peace of the kingdom. Then you go out as one of the 72, you walk the road. And when you see the fractured home or the bleeding neighbor, you don't walk by. You recognize that this is the mission. This is why you were sent.
And you accept the cost.
You accept the cost. You accept that the joy of belonging to Jesus, having your name written in heaven, is greater than the pain of the sacrifice.
We've journeyed from the harvest fields, up the Roman road, through the inn, and into the living room of Bethany. It's a complete picture of the Christian life.
It really is. It covers the head, the hands, and the heart.
So here is the challenge I want to leave you with, and this is for you, the listener, and for the class you might be leading. If the 72 returned with joy because they carried Jesus' peace, what are you carrying when you walk into a fractured home? Are you the priest, protecting his schedule, carrying a planner and a watch? Or are you the Samaritan, carrying the oil, the wine, and the willingness to accept the bloodstains?
That's the question. And remember, you can't carry the peace if you haven't sat at his feet first.
Let these talking points sink from your head to your heart. This isn't just about learning the architecture, it's about living in it. Thanks for diving in with us.
See you next time.
Messengers walk where the prophets long to go. Build the walls, let mercy stand. Peace declared across the land. Trumpets cry, the heavens roar. Jubilee forevermore. 2 by 2 through city gates, carrying hope no